What is up, my Shadowverse soldiers, and welcome back to another Shadowverse Evolved video. And just like that, soldiers, we are here with our final set of reveals. We have the neutral cards that are going to be coming out in our combined sets for sets 12 and 13. Alright, we'll leave all the updates for the end of the video, so stick around if you want to keep updated with the channels and stuff like that. But we're going to go ahead and get into our set 12 reveals here. Alright, so looking at our first card, so we have Natura Al Machinus, so it's a 5-cost 4/4. When this card is discarded, you can engage in your Tyrian Great Tree on your field to select a Natura card not named Natura Al Machinus in your cemetery and add it to your hand. But when it comes into play, you can look at the top 3 cards of your deck. You may reveal a Machina card from among them and add it to your hand, and you put the rest of the bottom of your deck in any order, and then you put a repair mode token into your EX area and you recover 3 play points. Alright, so I was wondering when peeking at this card why this card had Machina and Natura in it, so it seems it has both applications for both decks. So for the Tyrian Great Tree, for the Natura deck of course, we're able to discard this card and add any Natura card from our cemetery back into our hand, which is going to be pretty helpful because most of the Natura cards that we do want to run are going to be like our legendaries. So once we use our first legendary, we might want to run another one because they spawn out Tyrian Great Trees or, so on and so forth. However, the Natura deck is going to work. And then while over in the Machina deck, we have applications by being able to look at the top 3 cards. When we play this card, we can recover 3 play points, we can get a card in our EX area, so it does a lot of things that what Machina wants to do there. Alright, but moving on, we have Change Wing Cherub, so she's a 1-cost 1/1, you can evolve her for 1, but when she comes into play, we can put a repair mode or a Tyrian Great Tree token into our EX area. Alright, so this might honestly replace the 1-drop neutral for all the other decks just because it's able to put either the repair mode or the Tyrian Great Tree token onto the field. Now, it might be a little bit harder if you're running the Assembly Droid sort of variant from Machina, but most of the other decks are going to be running either the repair mode or the Tyrian Great Tree, and you don't have to discard a card. Alright, so looking at Changewing Evolve, so she turns into a 2/2, but on Evolve you select the enemy fallen on the field, and if there are at least 5 Machina cards and or Natura cards on your field and or in your EX area, you can deal it 2 damage. Alright, so I do believe that this is just the better 1-cost just because we're able to evolve this follower, have a 2/2, and then in the early game we can swing for some damage. And then later on in the games, as long as we have those 5 cards, that being the Machina and or Natura cards, both on field and in EX area, which is going to be pretty helpful that it counts for both. So being able to deal 2 damage to something is pretty helpful as well. Alright, next up we have Seraphic Blade, so it's a 2-cost spell card, so you can choose one. You can either 1, select the enemy card that costs 2 less on the field and destroy it, or 2, you can spend an extra 2 play points to select the enemy card that costs 6 or less on the field and destroy it. Alright, so I absolutely love the terminology in cards like this. So when it says remove cards, you can remove any card. So being able to spend 2, you can choose a 2 or less amulet or a 2 or less card, no matter what it is. As long as it's 2 or less, you can go ahead and just destroy it. And for extra 2 play points for a total of 4, you're able to choose any of those pesky amulets that are in the Wasteland deck to go ahead and remove them off the field. Alright, next up we have Traveler's Respite, so it's a 1-cost spell card, so look at the top 3 cards of your deck. You may reveal a Wasteland card or a Natura card from among them and add it to your hand. Put the rest of the bottom of your deck in any order, and if there's a Wasteland card on your field or in your EX area, you can give your leader +1 defense. So it totally slipped my mind that Natura and Wasteland can be shoved together, honestly, just because Wasteland isn't really the deck that draws too much, but adding those Natura and Tyrian Great Tree effects to being able to draw a card, discard a card, being able to filter out your deck some, because there are some decks that have, Necrocharge 10, or, having the requirement of having 10 cards in Cemetery, all these X things in Cemetery before you're able to do things. So it's not like the Natura line with having Tyrian Great Trees is bad, but you're not really plussing in hand size when using those Tyrian Great Trees, but we do really need to just draw on those Wasteland decks if we don't already have that engine. Alright, but moving on, we have Romantic Chanteuse, so it's a 3-cost 3/3, you can evolve for 1, but when it comes into play fanfare, you select the enemy follower on the field and engage it, and you can also activate for an extra 2 play points to select the enemy follower on the field and engage it. Alright, so hopefully with this evolve ability, we're able to choose those engaged followers to being able to do something. Alright, so looking at the Chanteuse evolve, so it turns into a 4/4, and on evolve, you give each enemy follower on the field, this follower doesn't deal damage for the rest of this turn. You can also activate for 2 play points to select the enemy follower on the field and engage it. Alright, so it seems like when you're going in to trade for followers, making sure those followers don't do damage on this turn, so you can start running followers into those enemy followers, and it doesn't really matter how much, attack that they have, because they're not going to deal damage. So being able to swing at an 8/8 follower, as long as we have 4 4/4s, we're able to swing both of them, and we keep our 2 cards, and they lose their 1. So moving on into giving Gourmet. So she's a 4-cost 4/4. When she comes into play Fanfare, you give your leader +3 defense, but she also has the last word, so when she dies, you can choose one of the two effects. You can either 1, search your deck for a chef follower that costs 3 or less and summon it and then shuffle, or 2, you can draw a card. Alright soldiers, so it looks like it's time to get cooking here with our giving Gourmet. So for 4, we can heal 3. And we really want to look towards this last words to being able to either draw a card or getting the chef follower that's going to be the Wasteland Chef that lets us look at the top 4 for any Wasteland card. Alright, so looking at Goblin Warpack. So it's a 2-cost spell card. So this card can only be played if there are at least 3 Goblinoid followers on your field. You can select the enemy follower in the field and then destroy it and then deal 2 damage to its leader. Alright soldiers, so we're almost there for a full Goblinoid deck. So I don't actually know what craft we would run goblins in. I think any deck that needs to be neutral should go in Dragon, I think, just because Dragon has access to ramping, and when we have all those extra play points, you know, we're able to do a whole bunch of things. But that's just my opinion, of course. You know, you can run it in Rune if you want to go ahead and get this spell from your deck with Merlin. I don't exactly know how the Goblinoid deck is, like, built or made to be built. I just know we keep getting Goblinoid cards, and you know the philosophy on this channel. If they keep printing support of it, it'll eventually be good. Alright, but moving on into Plucky Treasure Hunter. So she's a 2-cost 1/2, and you can evolve her for 1. Alright, and looking at Treasure Hunter Evolve, so she turns into a 2/3, but on evolve you discard a card, and then roll a 6-sided die. If you roll a 4, 5, or 6, you draw 3 cards. Alright, so card by card, I am definitely crafting the luck deck. I absolutely love it when you have to roll dice to figure out what you're going to be doing for X ability. So being able to roll a 6-sided die to draw 3 cards. Now, there isn't any negative merit to rolling a 1, 2, or 3 here, but if you roll high, like a 4, 5, or 6, drawing 3 cards, and then imagine if you pitch a Trail of Light. Just drawing a total of 4 cards in one turn is insane, but of course it's going to be wacky, fun, and tacky. Alright, next up we have Wayfaring Illustrator. So he's a 3-cost 2/3. When he comes into play Fanfare, you select the enemy follower on the field. Search your deck for an X-cost follower, put it into your EX area, and then shuffle. X equals the selected follower's cost. Alright, so I know this card will most definitely not really see play all too much, but being able to search your deck to get X follower or the X cost of the follower, and it can be any cost, especially in the late game. If you manage playing this card and then seeing a 7-cost follower, well, oh, okay, I can go through my deck and get a 7-cost follower. Of course, you're still going to be able to have to play it for 7 play points, but you know, just being able to go ahead and getting your boss monster isn't such a bad option. But I know this card won't see any play. In Soldiers, we've got a case. So it's a 2-cost spell card, so you can declare any card name, reveal the top card of your deck. If it has the declared name, you can draw 2 cards, and if not, then you only draw 1 card. Alright, so I do believe that this card would definitely be perfect in Haven, because Haven is the deck to be looking at the top X card most of the time. And if you manage to look at the top card of your deck before you're able to play this card, then you're able to just draw 2, which is pretty nice. I'm pretty sure you put the card back on top once you reveal it, so I think you just reveal the top card. If it's that, what you call it, you can go ahead and draw 2, you get 1 extra card, but if not, you go ahead and just get the card that you were trying to guess, but didn't guess it. In Soldiers, here is the alt card for the neutrals here. So we have the Natura Al Machinus. So if you're going to be running Machina / Natura, and you want this card, I think you're probably going to get more bonuses if you're going to be running this Machinus, because you're going to be playing this card. But if you're going to be running this card and then you want to have your U4, you know, do whatever you want, Soldiers. But like, you're probably going to get the most value out of having this card as the Machina card, just so you're able to play, look at the top 3. Everybody's able to look at it and it's not hitting your cemetery off of the Naturian Great Tree pitch. Alright, but let's move on into set 13, Dominion of Darkness. Alrighty, and first up we have Sa'Aquiel and Israfil, so they are a 7-cost 6/6. You can evolve them for 1 and they have ward, but when they come into play, you may summon a follower that costs 6 or less from your hand, and give it at the start of your end phase, return this card to its owner's hand. Alright, so I'm not gonna lie to you, Soldiers, I kind of put the Angel deck out of my mind for quite some time, but with Sa'Aquiel's, like the 6 cost that came out a couple of sets ago, that deck is kind of real. Just being able to play any card from your hand that's 6 or less, you can get their fanfares, oh excuse me. The other Sa'Aquiel wasn't 6 or less, but this card being 6 or less is fine too. But when you play Sa'Aquiel, you're probably going to play a card like this, just because you're able to get its fanfare off to play another card. You're just going to be proccing multiple fanfares in one turn. Of course, you're putting those cards back into your hand, but just being able to play them and have their fanfare go off, and then just accumulating the value, getting those cards back into your hand, keeping them safe in a way, but you are kind of open in a turn, so do be mindful when doing that. Alright, so let's look at their evolve. So they turn into a 7/7 and they still have ward, but on evolve you select another follower on the field and put it into its owner's EX area. If you put it into your EX area, you summon it engaged. Alright, so I'm assuming with this evolve, you're going to be proccing double fanfares here. So what you want to do is you want to get a nice 6-cost follower that you want to go ahead and play. Of course, it's going to go back into your hand, of course. Or if you want to already have another follower established and then maybe swing with it, go ahead and put it into your EX area so you can play it again, get its fanfares off, and then you're able to summon it engaged. Hopefully it's a ward, because then you will have 2 wards on the field with this card. Alright, so next up we have Planetary Fracture. So it's an 8-cost spell card. So you can banish each card on the field and in the EX area. Each player banishes the top 10 cards of their deck. Alright, so I want to go ahead and start and say that this card looks absolutely amazing. Like a captivating art for like a true disaster. Now I don't know exactly what the Planetary Fracture means in terms of the story, but in terms of card design, I think this is a pretty interesting card. Now I don't know how broken this card is going to be, but being able to banish the top 10 cards of your deck is pretty crucial, because we don't have that many cards in the deck already. So if we manage to banish all of our opponent's cards by the late game, I think that'll be absolutely insane. Alright, soldiers, so before we get into the next card, I do want to update everyone on Planetary Fracture that you can only include one of this card in your deck. So do be mindful when building for this upcoming set. You know, it's coming out tomorrow, so do be mindful when building this, just because we're only going to have the 1 copy. And if you're a new player, I just wanted to make sure everyone was on the same page in terms of like information gathering and everything. I know I haven't really talked about this card and restrictions or not, but if any of you soldiers do know the combo on why we can only have 1 of this in our deck, then please let me know in the comments below, or fill me in on the Discord, whatever works for you soldiers. But I do want to be informed on why we can only include 1 of this in our deck. But moving on into our next card here, we have Miriam Mutinous Being. So she's a 2-cost 2/2. You can evolve her for 2, but during your turn, whenever a follower is put from the field into the cemetery, you can deal 1 damage to each enemy leader. Alright, so I personally think that this card might be really helpful in Abyss, because Abyss usually gets rid of its own followers, or usually most of the time we're going to be bearing our own followers for our own abilities. So if you manage to play this card out and then you manage to get rid of another follower, or if your followers are trading into your other followers and you want to go ahead and ping for some damage while you're doing it, I think that's not a bad card, you know, to include too. But I think, you know, this might be really helpful in Abyss when doing some combo plays. Alright, so looking at Miriam Evolve, so she turns to a 4/4, and then on Evolve you bury another follower, and then you summon a Keen Edge artifact token. And she still has that static ability of during your turn, whenever a follower is put from the field into the cemetery, you deal 1 damage to each enemy leader. Alright, so like I said, soldiers, this might be really helpful in Abyss, or whenever followers have last words, being able to just on Evolve get rid of that follower, trigger those last words. You can go ahead and get a Keen Edge artifact token, which is going to be very helpful, and you're able to ping the enemy leader for 1. And alright, just in case you soldiers weren't in the last video, the last time we talked about the Keen Edge artifact, so it's a 5-cost token follower, which is a 3/4 with Rush and Drain. And next up, we have Grimnir Voidrot Wind. So he's a 3-cost 3/4. When he comes into play, you select the enemy follower in the field. If there are at least 3 faced-up evolved followers in your evolved deck, you can deal 5 damage to it and 3 damage to its leader. Alright, so I know this is a little off-topic, soldiers, but I'm not going to lie to you. When I was playing Grand Blue Fantasy Versus, this character was absolute saucy. I know this character had some ego and egotistical and everything with it. I don't know the exact lore for Grimnir, don't get me wrong, but I know when this character did combos, this was crazy saucy. So I know this card got an upgrade quite some time ago, or at least got a card, like, I think in set 2, set 3, I believe. But now it having the upgraded ability of making sure you have those 3 face-up evolved followers to being able to deal 5 damage and then dealing 3 to its leaders is pretty good for 3 play points. And next up, we have Frostfire, so it's a 4-cost quick spell. So this card costs 3 less to play if there's an Arcfiend follower on your field. You can select 2 enemy followers on the field, deal 5 damage to 1 and engage the other. Alright, so I think this card is pretty cute, not only for the fact that it has amazing art, and for the fact that, you know, the Fire and Ice deck, which I'm pretty sure that's the name of the deck, you know, correct me if I'm wrong, soldiers. The Fire and Ice deck was pretty nice when it did come out. Now, it most definitely got power crept with all the new legendaries and newer cards that have been coming out as of recently. Like, have you seen the last video we talked about where we talked about that giant Haven card? I think it was like the Goddess of Prosperity, had like a Bible of text. But anyways, getting back into this card, this being a 1-cost quick spell that deals 5 damage, and then being able to engage another follower is pretty good to do on their turn. But you do have to realize most of the Arcfiend followers that are in the game right now are pretty pricey, and before any of our opponents get to doing anything in terms of swinging, or before we're able to engage or activate quick timing, you know, they're going to take care of our Arcfiend follower before they do anything. But anyways, let's go ahead and move on into Mana Grocer. So he's a 4-cost 4/4, and we can evolve him for 1, and when he comes into play Fanfare, you draw a card. That's a nice little 4/4 body that allows you to draw a card. Let's see what his evolve does. Alright, moving on into the Grocer evolve. So he turns into a 5/5, but on evolve, you select the enemy follow on the field and deal it damage equal to the number of cards in your hand. Alright, so if you're a deck that draws a lot, this is a pretty nice card to have, being able to go ahead and draw a card, and then whatever X amount is for your hand size, that's how much damage you're doing to a follower. So if you have 7 cards, 7 damage. If you have 8, 8. And then sometimes there are situations where you have 9 cards in your hand, so a total of 9 damage to a follower isn't too crazy. Alright, next up we have Goddess of Rebirth. So she's a 10-cost 7/7. She has Ward, but when she comes into play, you give your leader +7 defense. You can also quick/activate for 4 play points to discard this card, and then you can select the enemy follow on the field and destroy it. Now, even though I do love this art, I do love what this double application that this card does have. I will say in quick/activating time, if you do have 4 play points, I'm still going to recommend Execution. I may be a bit of an old head, but if you have 4 play points up on your opponent's turn, they know you're up to no good. But having Execution in terms of like just hard removal, you can get rid of anything, which is really what gets me. But this still only targets followers, but also in the late game, you get a nice 10-cost 7/7 with Ward while also healing yourself 7. So, you know, there's applications of that, but I do believe Execution is still like a better card in my opinion, just because you're able to take care of anything on the field. Alright, but moving on, let's go ahead and look at Dogged Detective. So she's 3-cost 3/4. When she comes into play Fanfare, you select a follower with Evolve in your cemetery and add it to your hand. And whenever a follower on your field evolves, you give this follower Rush. Okay, so there's only 2 ways I really do see this card working. So you're very in the late game and you need to get back your key piece, like your legendary that evolves, so you're able to go ahead and play it again. Or if you want to go ahead in the early game and play this card out and then being able to get like a small card, like, I don't even want to say Bellringer, because Bellringer also costs like 3 to evolve. So if you have like a cheap follower that's able to play and then evolve for like 2, so like you're able to have 2 followers with Rush on field. So I think that might be the like 2 applications for this card. Alright, and next up, let's look at Armored Goblin. So he's a 2-cost 2/2, and you can evolve him for 1, and he has Ward. Alright, so I'm going to be honest with you, that Goblin does not need to be handling that shield. Alright, so looking at the Goblin evolve, so he turns into a 3/3, and he has Ward, but on evolve, the next time this follower would take damage this turn, it doesn't. Alright, so I think this is the perfect card for the Goblinoid deck, because I think the Goblinoid deck is trying to stall as much as it can. So getting a 3/3 with Ward while being able to trade into another follower in that turn, it doesn't take the damage, you have Ward active, and now they have to swing into that follower now. Alright, next up we have Fallen Harpist. So she's a 3-cost 3/4. When she comes into play, you search your deck for a neutral spell that costs 1 or less, reveal it and add it to your hand, and then shuffle. Alright, so I can't think off of the top of my head any neutral spells that cost 1 that really start engines. I know there's like Soul Ring. I don't want to say Soul Ring. I think it's Gold Ring. Mystic Ring. That's the name of the card. I'm sorry. I've been paying attention to multiple card games, so forgive me. So Mystic Ring is a card that you can get if you are running one of the neutral spell cards. Of course, you can get Angelic Snipe, Angelic Barrage, but you know, there are other cards that you're probably going to want to look for. I'm not sure. But I really do love this card art. I am absolutely loving this card art, and I'm not gonna lie, I would love a playmat of this. Alrighty, and lastly, we have Retracing the Past. So it's a 1-cost spell card. You select the follower on your field and give it Last Words. Give your leader +2 defense, and then draw a card for the rest of this turn. Alright, so with Chipper Skipper's ability, we're going to give a Mercenary follower +1/+1 and Rush. And most of the time when we do play a Mercenary follower, we're going to go ahead and trade it with Chipper Skipper. So if you have the 1 extra play point to go ahead and make sure those Mercenaries have the extra Last Words here, by being able to heal you and then draw your card to help you filter out. And then soldiers, we have our alt for set 13, the Sahak and Israfil. So this card looks absolutely beautiful. If you're looking for the Angel deck top line with this, a beautiful evolve card, I know this is going to look absolutely majestic, and I know this might be a huge sought after card for set 13. And alrighty soldiers, that is all the cards for sets 12 and 13. Man, quite the adventure. I love doing these reveals with all you soldiers and everyone who pays attention to these videos. I highly appreciate it because I kind of do them a little late. I'll try my best to get onto them earlier, but you know, I'm a busy guy. I try to do things as fast as I can and as best as I can and as neatly as I can. You know, I try to bring some Shadowverse Evolve content that you all will love and at least appreciate. And I hope you soldiers will be able to interact with me back, either in the Discord or in the comment section, knowing if I'm not doing my stuff. Alright soldiers, so it's update time. Alright, so how the next upcoming weeks are going to look like. So we do have an event coming up. We do have a Grand Showdown. I'm very excited to see what's going to be played because this is going to be sets 12 and 13. The ones that's going to be in my area, I might be at. I'm not sure. We're talking about it. We're talking about it. Chris and I are talking about it. Like, it's pretty close to me. It's on the East Coast, and I'm liking that BCS is kind of now in like the East Coast area. So that gives me a chance to play. So I'm a little excited to see what's going to be happening for sets 12 and 13. But however, whether I go or not, I'm still going to cover that event on what's going to be topping. I know I haven't talked about everything that did top in like set 11, even though, you know, there weren't really that many events, honestly, in my opinion. So I know for sets 12 and 13, we do have that grand showdown that's going to be coming up in December, which I'm very excited to hear about. But of course, getting on into the next couple of weeks that we're going to be seeing until we get into Grand Showdown here. So we are going to be talking about deck lists, but we are going to be doing them pretty differently on this channel this time. Of course, we're still going to have our Sunday webcam locals videos, which I know I've been lackluster in posting this week's one. But this week's one will be out today. I can promise you that. I've already edited it and everything. So any of you soldiers that were waiting for that replay, I will have that for you. But yeah, we will still have our webcam locals matches, but we'll only have like maybe 2 videos a week. So instead of having like this huge spam like I've just been doing this past couple of weeks, we'll probably do 2 videos a week outside of the webcam locals, which will be the deck preview and then the deck breakdown, which I usually do for Inverse Academy. So for the deck preview, which will be the new thing, we'll be talking about the little bits and pieces of the deck, what to really include in there. Hopefully Shadowverse Evolve will be rocking with us and they'll give us a nice basis, and then we'll look at a competitive list. And then of course I won't include my little splash of budget in it until we get into that Inverse Academy episode. And also lastly, for those soldiers who do care, we do have our Leonidas Logs, the podcast episode, coming up pretty soon. I'm going to work on it this weekend and it will be out next week. So that'll probably be one of the extra videos that will be coming up in the next week. So hopefully, you know, you can watch out for that. We'll be talking about everything that happened in set 11, everything that happened in Seaside Memories, and then we'll be looking at the predictions for sets 12 and 13, even though it's going to look very differently for Shadowverse Evolve English. Alright soldiers, so I think that was all the updates that I had for you. So I do want to let you soldiers know though that I did turn on the community tab on the YouTube channel. So everyone has like a source of just talking through the YouTube channel now. Now I'm not 100% sure how it works. I don't know. I know it's a new feature. I think it's still in beta. But for all you Shadowverse soldiers out there that are wanting to convene with each other and talk, I think there's a way outside of Discord, in case you don't have Discord, to just come here, you know, post what you want to post about, or talk about whatever you want to talk about Shadowverse Evolve wise, or whatever you want to talk about. But alright soldiers, make sure you are safe in whatever you do tonight and safe whatever you do for the rest of the year. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.
Yeah. TRINN. Just to get you away. What I got to do, what I got to do.